Gordon Lindsay was the founder of Christ for the Nations, or CFNI, a leading organization in the new Apostolic Reformation responsible for creating countless ministries and movements over several decades. Lindsay's orchestration of the Voice of Healing revival ministries, during the years when the movement merged with latter rain, was an unstoppable force from the late 1940s through the 1960s. His legacy continues through CFNI today, as the organization networks international Bible schools and provides theological training for a global network of ministers and evangelists. Lindsay was a member of multiple Pentecostal sects that influenced the trajectory of NAR doctrines. He was born in Zion City, founded by cult leader John Alexander Dowie, and his parents were members of Dowie's cult of personality. After Zion City suffered severe financial losses from Dowie's costly attempts to convert citizens in New York City, Lindsay's parents migrated to Portland. There, Lindsay converted to the Parhamite sect during a revival held by Pentecostal founder Charles Fox Parham and became a Parhamite. He later connected with John Lake, also a Parhamite and former member of Dowie's sect. Lindsay participated in the Lake revivals throughout California and the southern states. By 1932, Lindsay had become an evangelist at large for the Assemblies of God, co-founded by another Parhamite and leading member of Dowie's sect, F. Bosworth. In the late 1930s, Lindsay joined Amy Semple McPherson's cult of personality to become a minister and evangelist for the Foursquare Church. His wife, Frida, was a student at McPherson's Bible School. Together, Gordon and Frida formed a husband and wife evangelistic team. After several revivals in Tacoma, they became co-pastors of the Tacoma Foursquare Church. They held that position until February 1939, when Gordon Lindsay was appointed to the role of field extension work for McPherson's Foursquare organization. Interestingly, Lindsay's transition occurred shortly after McPherson appointed Christian Identity leader Gerald Burton Winrod as her temporary replacement in November 1938. Lindsay's district was adjacent to Saskatchewan, where Foursquare had established the Sharon Orphanage and where the latter rain movement subsequently originated. Considering the connections to leaders of Christian Identity affiliated with the Angelus Temple such as Winrod, and Christian Identity leader Wesley Swift, whose two-seed doctrine of Christian identity was spread through latter rain, when William Branham rebranded it as his serpent seed doctrine, many questions arise. Were latter rain leaders like George Houghton, who published racist and anti-Semitic literature asserting that blacks were created in, quote, God's wisdom to serve whites, members of the Christian Identity movement connected to the Angelus Temple? Were Gordon Lindsay's books and publications on UFO theology influenced by similar theologies from leaders in Christian Identity? Was Lindsay himself a leader in the Christian Identity movement? To find out, we must first examine a short-lived British Israel movement that became one of the primary catalysts for the formation of the Christian Identity movement in the United States and Canada. The Anglo-Saxon Christian world was a religious movement organized in Vancouver in 1938, aimed at organizing other British Israelism and Christian identity groups and spreading the newly emerging Christian identity doctrines that had developed from British Israelism in North America. The movement was launched during a 3-day conference held under the auspices of the British Israel Association of Greater Vancouver. It was an international movement led by Edward F. Odlum, W.C. Elford, and J.G. Wright. The group advertised itself as interdenominational and non-political, but lectured on what they perceived to be the connection between biblical prophecy and global politics. Within just 2 years of its development, the views presented by the group were so extreme that they were accused of being sympathetic to the Nazis. From its inception, the group blended military themes with apocalyptic predictions and British Israelism to create a militant form of Christianity. Colonel J.G. Wright, who served as the movement's general secretary, had previously led the 163rd Battalion in Toronto during World War I and commanded the 54th Battalion in France. The group also invited military guests, such as United States Army Reserve Colonel H.M. Green of Portland, who was in charge of the base hospital at Camp Lewis during World War I, Major F.T. Fort of the British Indian Army, and Masonic lecturer Sergeant Major Fred Johnson, who served on the Canadian Forces during World War I. Johnson and others in the movement lectured on military strategies such as blitzkrieg, a combined arms surprise attack using the rapid, overwhelming force of armored, motorized, or mechanized infantry formations. The group also had deep ties to white supremacy through leaders such as Dr. Clem Davies. Davies, an anti-Semitic, right-wing promoter of numerous white supremacy groups in Vancouver, had been involved with the 1937 convention of the Anglo-Saxon Association of North America, a collaboration between the western segments of two Christian identity groups. The meeting, held in Seattle, united Howard Rand's Anglo-Saxon Federation of America and the British Israel Association of Greater Vancouver, becoming one of the catalysts for the formation of Christian identity as a movement. Howard Rand himself attended the conferences, as did Oregon Klan leader Reverend R.H. Sawyer, who introduced the Klan to Portland during an address to 6,000 people at the Municipal Auditorium on December 22, 1921. Davies frequently collaborated with Sawyer and other Anglo-Saxon Christian World Movement members. Besides Clem Davies, who had connections with William Branham through Branham's work with the Kardashian family, and Demas Shakarian, founder of the Full Gospel Business Men's Fellowship International, in a failed attempt to heal Vaughan Orachelian, other leaders of the Anglo-Saxon Christian world were also prominent in the Latter Rain movement. Gordon Lindsay, who promoted himself as an expert in British Israelism, was a leader and a primary speaker for the Anglo-Saxon Christian world movement. Through the Voice of Healing publication and movement, Lindsay helped launch the ministries of countless ministers and evangelists and published articles sympathetic to the Anglo-Saxon Christian world agenda. Herb Armstrong, one of the pioneers of televangelism who paved the way for the new Apostolic Reformation, was also a leader in the Anglo-Saxon Christian world movement and used his radio Church of God to promote the group's Christian identity agenda. Armstrong's lectures were sponsored by the group as early as 1941. During the height of the Latter Rain movement, as the gospel of divine healing grew controversial, Armstrong published his controversial book, Does God Heal Today? The book endorsed divine healing and advocated for a ban on medical intervention, which Armstrong claimed was of pagan origin and ineffective. Armstrong's Radio Church of God was renamed Worldwide Church of God in the late 1960s when Armstrong began broadcasting a television version of The World of Tomorrow. The program was so popular that it expanded to 382 television stations across the United States and 36 television outlets internationally, dwarfing the broadcasts of Jerry Falwell, Jimmy Swaggart, Oral Roberts, and Jim Baker.